Dr. Lisa Murray took a deep breath as she straightened her lab coat. Today was the day. After decades of distant communication, the Araxians had finally arrived on Earth. As the lead xenobiologist assigned to the diplomatic mission, she would be one of the first humans to meet these insect-like aliens face to face. "You ready for this?" asked Jack Peters, her colleague and friend of 15 years. He looked as nervous as she felt. "As ready as I'll ever be," Lisa replied, glancing at her reflection in the polished surface of a nearby medical cabinet. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she had skipped makeup today. This was about science, not appearances. The airlock doors of the quarantine facility hissed open. The Araxian delegation consisted of 5 individuals, each standing about 5 feet tall with iridescent exoskeletons that shimmered between green and blue. Their forearms moved with precise, deliberate motions, and their compound eyes reflected the bright lights of the lab. The tallest one stepped forward. "I am Zikatal, Chief Medical Officer of the Araxian Science Guild. We are honored to meet representatives of humanity." The translator device on its thorax produced perfectly understandable English, though the tone was flat and mechanical. Lisa stepped forward with a professional smile. "I'm Dr. Lisa Murray, Xenobiology Department Lead. Welcome to Earth. This is my colleague, Dr. Jack Peters." The formalities continued for several minutes before they got down to business. Part of the diplomatic agreement included medical assessments of both species to ensure there were no biological threats. "We will need basic biological samples," Lisa explained, gesturing to the medical equipment. "Blood, tissue swabs, that sort of thing. We'll also need to record basic vital signs. Is that acceptable?" The Araxians agreed, and the 2 species began their examinations in parallel. Lisa was fascinated by the Araxians' copper-based blood and their unusual respiratory system. But what caught her attention was Zikatal's reaction when examining her blood sample and vital signs. The alien's antennae suddenly went rigid. It made a strange clicking sound before speaking again. "There must be an error in our equipment." "What kind of error?" Lisa asked, moving closer to see the readings on the alien device. Zikatal's compound eyes shifted rapidly between the readings and Lisa's face. "According to these measurements, your biochemistry shouldn't function. You should be dead." Jack laughed from the other side of the room. "Probably just a calibration issue. Your equipment is designed for Araxian biology, after all." But Zikatal wasn't laughing. The alien called over its colleagues, and soon all 5 were examining the human biological data with intense focus, their antennae twitching rapidly in what Lisa recognized as their version of agitated communication. "Is there a problem?" Lisa asked, growing concerned. Viernox, the lead Araxian scientist, turned to her. "Your species, your cellular structure is chaotic. Your body temperature should cook your own proteins. The acidity levels in your stomach would dissolve metal. Your blood cells, they attack foreign objects? They consume them?" Lisa nodded slowly. "Yes, that's our immune system. White blood cells identify and destroy pathogens." "Pathogens?" Another Araxian named Teklara joined the conversation. "You mean your bodies are constantly under attack from microscopic life forms?" "Well, yes," Jack said, looking confused. "Isn't that true for all life forms? Bacteria, viruses, fungi, they're everywhere." The Araxians fell silent, their antennae now perfectly still in what Lisa was beginning to recognize as shock. "We would like to request more detailed samples," Zikatal finally said. "With your permission, we would like to study your immune responses, your digestive processes, and your cellular regeneration." Lisa nodded, still puzzled by their. Ben Harlow rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of coffee. As the chief medical officer overseeing the Human Araxian Exchange Program, he had spent the last 3 days reviewing the aliens' request for additional blood samples. The list was growing by the hour. "They've asked for samples from 50 more volunteers," said Lisa, dropping a tablet on Ben's desk. "They specifically want people with different blood types, ages, and health conditions." Ben frowned. "What exactly are they looking for?" "They've been analyzing these samples non-stop." "I wish I knew," Lisa replied. "They've been very secretive about their findings." Just then, Jack Peters knocked on the open door. The Araxian lead scientist is asking to speak with both of you. Says it's urgent. Ben and Lisa exchanged glances before following Jack to the main lab. Inside, they found Veer Knox, the Araxian head researcher, surrounded by holographic displays showing human cellular structures. Barnox's antennae twitched as they entered. Dr. Harlow, Dr. Murray, thank you for coming. We have concerns. What kind of concerns? Ben asked, trying to make sense of the complex images floating around the room. Your biology, Vernox stated flatly. It operates with such inefficiency and contradiction that we cannot understand how your species survives. Lisa crossed her arms. I'm not sure I follow. Vornox gestured to one of the displays showing human red blood cells. Your oxygen transport system is wildly inefficient. Your cells carry oxygen molecules individually rather than in compound form. Any other spacefaring species we know uses at least double your efficiency. But it works for us, Ben said defensively. That is precisely what confuses us, Vornox continued, moving to another display. This is your inflammation response. When injured or infected, your bodies... How do I explain this? Your bodies set themselves on fire to kill invaders. Jack laughed. That's a colorful way of putting it. It is not meant to be humorous, said Zakatal, who had just entered the lab. Your immune system releases chemicals that increase local temperature, cause swelling, and often damage your own cells in the process of fighting infection. It is like burning down a house to kill a pest. Ben shrugged. But it works. That is our point, Viernox said, antennae quivering. By all our scientific understanding, it should not work. Your biology operates in ways that should be fatal. Lisa moved closer to one of the displays. What's this one showing? Your digestive process, Zikatal explained. You consume plants and animals that contain compounds toxic to your cells. Your body identifies these toxins. Then rather than rejecting them, it transforms them into useful materials. You literally convert poison to nutrition on a daily basis. The room fell silent as the humans considered this perspective. We never thought about it that way, Ben finally said. These processes evolved over millions of years on Earth. Viernox clicked its mandibles together, and what they had learned was a sign of deep thought. What kind of planet evolves life forms that must constantly battle to survive within their own bodies? Earth can be harsh, Lisa admitted. But it's home. We have another question, Zikatal said, pulling up a new display showing white blood, cells attacking a bacterium. These cells, they consume other life forms. They engulf and digest them. Is this not disturbing to you? Jack shrugged. It's just how our immune system works. In all our travels, Viernox said slowly, we have never encountered a species whose basic cellular functions include devouring other living things. It is unsettling. Ben noticed the way the aliens' exoskeletons seemed to shift slightly, a reaction he was beginning to recognize as their version of a shudder. I'm starting to think you find us scary, Lisa said with a small smile. Vernox's compound eyes focused on her. Not scary, Dr. Murray, impossible. Your biology should not function, you should not be alive, let alone thriving. Yet here you are, building civilizations and reaching for the stars with bodies that operate like battlefields. Ben watched as the Araxians huddled together, chittering quietly among themselves. He caught Lisa's eye and whispered, I think we might be the real aliens here. Lisa nodded slowly. To them, we must seem like walking biological impossibilities. I wonder what else about us will freak them out, Jack muttered, just as Tikalara entered the lab carrying what looked like human blood samples for yet another round of tests. Reaction. Of course, that's why we're here, to learn from each other. The Araxians huddled together, speaking rapidly in their own language with their translator devices turned off. Lisa turned to Jack with a raised eyebrow. What do you think that was all about? She whispered. Jack shrugged. No idea. But I get the feeling our new friends are either really impressed or really terrified by something in our blood work. Lisa watched as the aliens continued their animated discussion. Whatever they had discovered about human biology had clearly shaken them. She couldn't help but wonder, what was it about humans that could possibly surprise a species advanced enough for interstellar travel? The alarm blared through the laboratory, its red warning lights casting an eerie glow over the startled faces of both humans and aliens. Dr. Kate Simmons, who had been analyzing cells under a microscope, jumped to her feet. "What's happening?" she called out over the noise. Across the lab, Tika Lara, the junior Araxian scientist, was backed against the wall. Two of her fellow aliens were spraying her exoskeleton with some kind of blue mist, while a third was sealing off the area where she had been working. Ben Harlow burst through the door. "What's going on here?" Vernox turned to him, antennae vibrating rapidly. "Containment breach. Tika Lara has been exposed to human white blood cells." Ben looked confused. "And? We've been breathing the same air for weeks now. Not airborne particles," Zikatal explained hurriedly. "Direct contact." The sample container cracked and spilled onto her outer limb. Lisa Murray pushed through the gathering crowd. "It's just a few drops of blood. Why the panic?" The Araxians stared at her in what seemed like horror. Vernox stepped forward. "Your blood cells are attacking her tissues. We must stop the process before it spreads." Kate moved closer to Takalara and noticed a small clear patch forming on the alien's normally shimmering exoskeleton. "May I?" she asked, reaching for a scanner. The alien hesitated, then extended her arm. Kate ran the scanner over the spot and whistled softly. "You're right. The white blood cells are active. They've identified her tissue as foreign and are, well, doing what they're designed to do. This is why we're in lockdown," Skatal explained. "If your defensive cells can attack our biology so effectively from simple contact, we face a serious contamination risk." Jack Peters, who had been silently observing, finally spoke up. "Wait a minute, are you saying you don't have an immune system?" The room fell silent except for the continued alarm, which someone finally shut off. "Not like yours," Vernox replied. "Our bodies do not attack foreign organisms. We evolved differently." Ben looked stunned. "Then how do you fight off infections? Viruses? Bacteria?" "Our world has very few microscopic predators," Zikatal explained. "Those that exist cannot penetrate our exoskeletons. We have chemical secretions that discourage harmful growth on our surfaces, but nothing like your internal army." Lisa's eyes widened. "That's why you've been so interested in our white blood cells. You don't have anything like them." "Correct," Vernox said. "And now we have discovered they are highly aggressive toward our tissue types. A serious concern for continued relations between our species." Kate examined the scanner readings more closely. "This is fascinating. The white blood cells are breaking down her exoskeleton proteins at an accelerated rate." "Fascinating?" Tikalara's translator squawked. "Your body is eating mine." "I'm sorry," Kate said quickly. "You're right, this is serious, but I think I can help." She hurried to a cabinet and returned with a small spray bottle. "This contains corticosteroids. It will suppress the immune response." She sprayed the affected area, and everyone watched as the clear patch stopped expanding. "The attack appears to be halting," Zikatal observed after a tense minute. Ben ran his hand through his hair. "I never thought our blood would be dangerous to you. This changes everything about our protocols." Vernox's compound eyes reflected the lab lights as it turned to Ben. "Do you understand now why your biology frightens us? Your cells hunt and kill without direction. They identify other and destroy it automatically." Lisa nodded slowly. "Our immune system evolved on a planet teeming with microscopic threats. It had to be aggressive to keep us alive. And now we discover it is equally aggressive toward us," Zikatal added. "A simple lab accident could have become an extinction-level event if your blood had been more widely dispersed among our people." The humans exchanged troubled glances. What had seemed like a minor workplace incident to them was being treated as a potential catastrophe by the aliens. "We'll need to revise all safety protocols," Ben said. Alan Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead as he finished his 5th set of bench presses. As the owner of a small gym in town, he had volunteered for the Human Araxian Exchange Program. Partly out of curiosity, and partly because his brother Jack Peters had convinced him it would be cool to meet aliens. He hadn't expected to become the center of attention. "Please perform the motion again," Vernox requested, watching Alan with all four of its compound eyes fixed intensely on his muscles. Alan shrugged and picked up the dumbbells again, performing a simple bicep curl. The three Araxians in the room clicked their mandibles rapidly, a sound the humans had learned indicated extreme interest or surprise. "And this causes pain?" asked Zakatal, who was recording the exercise session. "Not really pain," Alan explained, setting down the weights. "More like a burning sensation. It means the muscle is being worked." Lisa Murray, who had been observing from the corner, stepped forward. "Alan is deliberately stressing his muscle fibers. This causes micro-tears, which then heal stronger than before." The Araxians froze, their antennae going rigid. "You deliberately damage your body?" Tikalara asked, her translator barely able to convey her shock. Alan laughed. "It's called working out. How else would I get stronger?" The aliens exchanged glances. First Knox approached Alan and hesitantly touched his arm with one slender appendage. "Your species deliberately damages itself to become stronger?" "Well, yeah," Alan said, flexing his bicep. "If I do this regularly, my muscles adapt and grow. It's basic biology." "Not basic to us," Zikatal said quietly. "In our species, tissue damage is permanent, or at least it heals with significant scarring and reduced function." A silence fell over the room as the humans processed this information. "You mean?" Ben Harlow said slowly, having just entered the room. "You can't get stronger through exercise?" "The concept is completely foreign to us," Vernox admitted. "Our exoskeletons either grow intact or are damaged. There is no adaptation as you describe it." Alan looked thoughtful. "So if you lift heavy things every day, our limbs would eventually crack and break," Tikalara finished for him. "They do not strengthen from use." Kate Simmons, who had been taking notes nearby, leaned forward with interest. "How do you develop physical capabilities then?" "We molt and grow," Zakatal explained. "Each new exoskeleton forms based on genetic instructions, not environmental stresses." Lisa's eyes widened. "So you're essentially born with all the strength you'll ever have?" "With minor variations, yes," Vernox confirmed. Alan stood up and grabbed a protein shake he had prepared earlier. He took a long drink, then wiped his mouth. "So what happens if an Araxian tries to get stronger?" "We break," Tikalara said simply. "That is why your biology is so unsettling to us. You deliberately harm yourselves, trusting that you will heal stronger. It seems like madness." Alan grinned. "Sometimes you gotta break down to build up. That's the human way." Vernox's antennae twitched rapidly. "This explains much about your species' dominance on such a hostile planet. Your biology is equally hostile, constantly breaking and rebuilding itself." Zikatal moved closer to examine the weights Alan had been lifting. "And this is common practice among humans?" "Millions of people do it every day," Alan confirmed. "Gyms are everywhere." The Araxians fell silent, their exoskeletons shifting colors slightly in what the humans recognized as deep thought. "Your entire species engages in deliberate self-damage for improvement," Vernox finally said. "This changes our understanding of your psychology as well as your biology." Ben exchanged glances with Lisa. "I never thought about it that way. We just call it exercise." "We have a saying," Alan added, reaching for another weight. "No pain, no gain." The Araxians' translator struggled with this concept, producing a series of confused clicks before Tikalara asked, "You equate pain with progress?" "Sometimes," Alan said with a shrug. "It's how we know we're pushing our limits." Vernox turned to the other Araxians and spoke rapidly in their native language. The humans couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable, a mixture of awe and horror. "I believe," Zikatal finally said, turning back to the humans, "that we have much more to learn about human resilience than we initially thought. Full containment gear for everyone, no direct contact between species." As the Araxians huddled around their affected colleague, Kate leaned toward Lisa and whispered, Did you ever think our own blood would be a biological weapon? Lisa shook her head. No, but I'm starting to understand why they said we shouldn't be alive. Our bodies are literally at war all the time and we don't even notice it. Cindy Foster carefully arranged her microscope slides as she prepared for the day's presentation. As a microbiologist specializing in gut bacteria, she had been thrilled when Lisa asked her to join the exchange program. Now, 3 weeks in, she was about to explain the human digestive system to their alien visitors. Are you ready? Lisa asked, poking her head into the lab. The Araxians are waiting in the conference room. Cindy nodded and gathered her materials. Let's go blow their minds. The conference room was already full when they arrived. Ben Harlow sat with Kate and Jack while Alan lounged in a chair near the back. The 5 Araxians were seated together, their exoskeletons gleaming under the bright lights. Thank you all for coming, Cindy began, connecting her tablet to the display screen. Today I'll be explaining the human digestive system and our relationship with gut bacteria. A colorful diagram of the human digestive tract appeared on the screen. Humans are not just single organisms, Cindy explained. We're actually walking ecosystems. Each of us carries trillions of microorganisms inside our bodies, particularly in our digestive systems. The translator worked for a moment before Zikatal spoke up. You harbor other life forms. Inside you? Deliberately? Yes, Cindy said cheerfully. We couldn't survive without them. These bacteria help us break down food, produce vitamins, and even support our immune systems. The Araxian's antennae began twitching wildly. Let me clarify, Vernox said slowly. You consume food materials which enter this tube called your digestive tract, and inside this tube live billions of other creatures that help you? Exactly, Cindy confirmed. It's a symbiotic relationship that evolved over millions of years. Max Plen, the Araxian nutritional scientist who had been quiet until now, suddenly stood up. This explains the anomalies in your food consumption patterns. You can digest almost anything because you have enslaved microscopic life forms to do it for you. Cindy laughed. I wouldn't call it enslavement. It's more of a partnership. They get a safe place to live and plenty of food, and we get help digesting complex molecules. And these bacteria? Tikalara asked. They do not attack you from within? Sometimes. The balance gets disrupted, Cindy admitted. But generally, our bodies have ways of maintaining the right bacterial populations. Mexplen's exoskeleton had changed to a pale blue color, which the humans had learned indicated extreme stress. How many different species live inside you? Current estimates suggest over 1,000 different bacterial species in the human gut alone, Cindy replied. And that's not counting the fungi, viruses, and other microorganisms. The Araxian nutritionist made a strange chirping sound and collapsed back into its seat. Is Mexplen okay? Lisa asked with concern. It is overwhelmed, Zikatal explained. In our biology, the presence of any foreign organism is a sign of illness or parasitism. The idea of beneficial internal organisms is difficult to process. Cindy continued her presentation, explaining how humans could adapt to eat almost anything given enough time. Our gut bacteria can even evolve to help us digest new foods. People who move to new regions with different diets eventually develop gut bacteria suited to those foods. This prompted Max Plen to stand up again. You mean to say that the creatures inside you can change to accommodate new food sources? Yes, Cindy said. It's part of why humans are so adaptable. The Araxian made another chirping sound and would have fallen if Virnox hadn't caught it. I think we need a brief recess, Virnox announced. Mexplen requires time to recalibrate its understanding. As the Araxians helped their colleague from the room, Jack turned to Cindy with a grin. Congratulations. You just made an alien faint with your gut bacteria. It's not funny, Ben said, though he was smiling too. To them, what Cindy just described must sound like extremely advanced biotechnology or complete madness. Cindy shrugged. I haven't even gotten to the part about fecal transplants yet. Lisa groaned. Maybe save that for tomorrow. Dr. Steve Washington plugged his tablet into the conference room display system. As a sports medicine specialist, He had been asked to explain human endurance to the Araxians. He wasn't sure why this topic had caused such a stir, but Lisa had insisted it was important. Today we'll be looking at how humans deal with physical stress and pain, Steve began. I've prepared some videos of endurance athletes to help illustrate the concepts. The screen lit up with footage of the New York City Marathon. Thousands of runners filled the streets, their faces showing determination as they pushed through mile after mile. This is a marathon, Steve explained. These people will run 26.2 miles, about 42 kilometers, without stopping. The Araxians leaned forward, their antennae twitching in unison. How long does this take? Asked Zekatal. Elite runners finish in just over 2 hours, Steve replied. Average runners might take 4 or 5 hours. They run continuously for hours? Viernox's translator couldn't quite capture the disbelief in its voice. Yes, Steve confirmed. And some people run even longer distances. He switched to footage of an ultramarathon through the desert. Runners trudged across sand dunes under a burning sun, some looking exhausted but continuing forward. This race is 100 miles long, Steve explained. It takes most participants over 24 hours to complete. The room fell silent. Even the humans, who were used to such feats, felt a renewed sense of awe watching the footage. This cannot be healthy, Mexplen finally said. Their bodies must be breaking down. They are, Steve acknowledged. The runners experience muscle damage, dehydration, sometimes even hallucinations from lack of sleep. But they keep going. Why? Tikalara asked. What purpose does this serve? Steve thought for a moment. For some, it's about testing their limits. For others, it's the sense of accomplishment. Many experience what we call a runner's high, a feeling of euphoria during intense exercise. Euphoria, Zekatal repeated, the translator struggling with the concept. You mean they experience pleasure from this self-inflicted suffering? In a way, yes, Steve said. The body releases endorphins, natural painkillers during prolonged exercise. Some runners become addicted to that feeling. Viernox turned to the other Araxians and spoke rapidly in their native language. The humans waited, now accustomed to these private consultations. We have a hypothesis, Viernox finally announced. Humans must have been artificially engineered by some ancient, advanced civilization. Natural evolution could not produce a species that enjoys its own suffering. Ben Harlow laughed. I assure you, we evolved naturally on Earth. Then explain this, Zekatal said, gesturing to the screen where a triathlete was now struggling through the final miles of an Ironman competition. This human has already swum 2.4 miles and cycled 112 miles. Now he runs a full marathon. His body is clearly sending pain signals. Why does he ignore them? Humans can override pain signals when we're motivated enough, Steve explained. We can push through almost anything if we believe it's worth it. Override pain? Tikalara's voice rose in pitch. Pain exists to prevent damage. This is like disconnecting a warning system during a crisis. Alan Rodriguez, who had been silently watching from the back of the room, spoke up. Sometimes you have to ignore the warnings to achieve something great. That's how we've survived as a species. Lisa nodded. Early humans had to hunt for days, tracking animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. Our endurance is part of our evolutionary heritage. The Araxians' exoskeletons shifted colors rapidly, displaying what the humans now recognized as intense, emotional responses. Your species deliberately ignores biological warning signs, Viernox summarized. You damage yourselves, then experience pleasure from the recovery. You push beyond reasonable limits as a matter of cultural pride. That's one way to put it, Steve said with a smile. Zekatal's compound eyes focused on the screen, where the triathlete had crossed the finish line and collapsed into a volunteer's arms, a smile of triumph on his exhausted face. I begin to understand why your species has conquered your planet, the alien said quietly. You are capable of tolerating conditions that would destroy most life forms. We call it human spirit, Kate added from across the room. The ability to endure and overcome. We call it biological insanity, Viernox replied, but its tone held a new note of respect. They've had enough shocks for one day. I'm beginning. To understand why they find us so strange, Kate said thoughtfully. Everything about our biology seems designed to survive no matter what. We heal from damage, we fight off invaders, we form alliances with microscopic organisms. We're basically walking war machines. Walking ecosystems, Cindy corrected with a smile. But yes, humans are pretty amazing when you look at us from the outside. Alan laughed. Wait until they find out how we handle pain. Gary Phillips shuffled through his notes as he prepared for the diplomatic meeting. As the human negotiator assigned to the Araxian exchange program, he had been busy drafting potential trade agreements between Earth and the alien visitors. Today's meeting would cover resource sharing and technology exchange. The conference room door slid open as the Araxian delegation entered. VR Knox led the group, followed by Zekatal and 3 other officials Gary hadn't met before. Good morning, Gary said with a smile. I hope you've had a productive week studying our biology. Most illuminating, VR Knox replied, its translator conveying a tone of genuine interest. We have much to discuss about potential collaborations. As the meeting began, Gary distributed paper copies of the draft agreement. While explaining a particular clause, he felt a sharp sting on his finger. Ouch, he muttered, looking down to see a small cut on his index finger. A paper cut. The Araxians immediately stopped talking. All 5 sets of compound eyes focused intensely on Gary's finger as a small drop of blood formed along the thin cut. Are you injured? Zekatal asked, leaning forward. Gary laughed. It's just a paper cut. Nothing serious. Instead of continuing the meeting, the Araxians moved closer, watching with fascination as Gary pulled a tissue from his pocket and pressed it against the small wound. Please, Virnox said. May we observe the injury? Confused but willing to cooperate, Gary held out his finger. The cut was tiny, barely visible except for the thin line of red. Fascinating, Virnox said. Your body has already begun the healing process. Well, yes, Gary replied, not understanding their interest. That's what bodies do. Not like yours, Zekatal explained. Watch closely. Gary looked at his finger again. Indeed, the bleeding had already stopped. The edges of the cut were slightly red as inflammation began. This process, Virnox continued, is happening without conscious direction. Your body automatically seals the wound, prevents infection, and begins repairs. That's how cuts heal, Gary said, still confused by their fascination. Lisa Murray, who had been quietly observing from the corner, stepped forward. I think I understand their interest, Gary. The Araxians don't heal the same way we do, Virnox nodded. Our injuries do not automatically repair. Minor damage to our exoskeletons remains until our next molting cycle. Internal injuries often require medical intervention to prevent fluid loss. You mean you don't just heal on your own? Gary asked. Not with your efficiency, Zekatal replied. What you consider a minor injury would be a persistent problem for us until medical treatment or natural growth cycles address it. Dr. Ben Harlow entered the room, carrying a tablet. I heard we had a medical situation? Just a paper cut, Gary said with a laugh. The Araxians seemed fascinated by it. Ben nodded, understanding. I've been reviewing their medical records. Their healing process is completely different from ours. What seems trivial to us is quite significant to them. Virnox turned to Ben. We have been studying your historical medical records as well. Humans have survived injuries that would be fatal to our species. Lost limbs, punctured organs, massive blood loss, yet they recover. We're pretty resilient, Ben acknowledged. Zekatal's antennae twitched rapidly. More than resilient. Your healing capabilities border on regeneration. Even your brain can rewire itself after damage. The senior Araxian diplomat, who had been silent until now, spoke quietly to its colleagues in their native language. The humans couldn't understand the words, but the tone seemed serious. After a moment, Virnox turned back to the humans. Our diplomatic team has reached a conclusion. Peace with humans is our only viable option. Your biological resilience would make warfare inadvisable. Gary blinked in surprise. You're considering peace because of how we heal from paper cuts? Not just paper cuts, Zektal explained. Everything we have learned about your biology suggests humans would be devastating opponents. You heal from injuries, adapt to poisons, and can continue fighting despite physical trauma that would incapacitate our forces. Lisa caught Ben's eye across the room, both realizing the same thing. Their normal, everyday biology had become the most F. The observation deck of the Araxian ship offered a stunning view of Earth. Dr. Lisa Murray stood beside Virnox, watching her blue home planet slowly rotate below them. After 3 months of study, the Araxian delegation was preparing to return to their homeworld. It's beautiful from up here, Lisa said softly. Beautiful but harsh, Virnox replied. Now we understand how such a challenging world produced beings like you. Ben Harlow and the rest of the human team entered the observation deck. This would be their final meeting before the Araxians departed. We've prepared copies of all our research findings for you to take home, Ben said, handing Zikatal a small data crystal, though I suspect your leaders will have trouble believing some of it. Indeed, Zikatal agreed. Our preliminary reports were met with skepticism. Many believe we are exaggerating human biological capabilities. What exactly did you tell them? Kate asked with a smile. Virnox's antennae twitched in amusement. That we encountered a species of biological anomalies who should not exist according to conventional science. The humans laughed, now comfortable enough with the aliens to appreciate their perspective. We've prepared a formal classification of human biology, Virnox continued, activating a holographic display. It may interest you to see how we scientifically describe your species. The display showed a detailed analysis of human physiology, translated into English. The title read, Biological Assessment of Homo sapiens, Evolutionary Anomalies and Adaptations. Lisa read aloud from the report. Humans are the only known species that seems to have evolved through crisis after crisis, retaining seemingly contradictory biological features that should have been selected against. That's us, Jack said proudly. The walking contradictions. What interested us most, Zikatal explained, was not just your physical adaptations, but how unaware you are of your own exceptional nature. We take our biology for granted, Ben acknowledged. Until you pointed it out, we never thought about how strange our immune system might seem to other life forms. Virnox touched a control, changing the display to show a comparison between Araxian and human biological responses. Your species does not just adapt to your environment, you actively reshape it, while simultaneously reshaping yourselves through behavior. The concept of exercise alone, T. Kalara added, demonstrates a fundamentally different relationship with your own bodies than any species we have encountered. Alan grinned. Just wait until you tell your people about our gut bacteria. That really freaked you out. Mexplen's exoskeleton briefly flushed blue at the memory. The notion of hosting thousands of symbiotic species within your digestive tract remains unsettling. As the two groups exchanged final observations, Gary Phillips reviewed the trade agreements that had been finalized. These will form a solid foundation for future relations, he said. Your people seem particularly interested in our medical technology. With good reason, Zikatal replied. Your medicine evolved to work with your remarkable healing abilities. Some of your basic treatments could revolutionize our healthcare. The ship's communication system chimed, indicating it was time for departure. The humans began saying their goodbyes to the aliens they now considered friends. As Lisa prepared to leave, Virnox pulled her aside. I have one final question, Dr. Murray. Of course, she replied. Do humans truly not realize how extraordinary they are? The alien asked. You live in bodies that are constantly at war, constantly rebuilding, constantly adapting, and you consider this normal. Lisa thought for a moment. I suppose we don't. We only see how fragile we are, how easily we can die. We rarely appreciate the miracle that we live at all. Take it from an outside observer, Virnox said, placing a slender appendage gently on her shoulder. Your biological flaws and inefficiencies are your greatest strengths. What you call normal, the rest of the galaxy would call impossible. As the human team departed the ship for the last time, they looked at each other with new eyes. Through the Araxians' perspective, they had glimpsed what made humanity special. Not their technology or their culture, but the remarkable, resilient, impossible biology they had taken for granted their entire lives. "Well," Ben said as they watched the alien ship prepare for departure, "I'll never look at a paper cut the same way again." Lisa smiled. "Or a workout. Or a stomach ache. Or anything about being human," Kate added quietly, as the Araxian ship disappeared into the stars, carrying the story of Earth's impossible inhabitants back to their homeworld. Active peace negotiation strategy imaginable. "Well," Gary said, recovering his professional demeanor, "I'm glad we found common ground for peaceful relations. Shall we continue with the trade agreement?" As they returned to business, Gary noticed the Araxians treating him with a new level of respect, all because his body could heal a simple paper cut.